Masking. This is why you act differently depending on who you're with. You might have noticed something about yourself, that you're not the same person with everyone. With some people, you're quieter. With others, you're louder. Sometimes you're more confident, expressive, maybe animated. Other times you might be guarded, more careful, or almost invisible. And at some point, you might have even wondered, which one of these people is the real me? Or worse, you might be asking yourself, am I fake? This video is about understanding that. Because acting differently depending on who you're with, it isn't a flaw. It isn't manipulation and it isn't dishonesty. In most cases, it's your nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do to keep you safe. We don't just have one personality. We have a personality range, a spectrum. We grow up being told to be yourself, as if the self or yourself is one solid, unchangeable thing. But humans don't really work like that. Think about it. You speak differently to a child than you would to a colleague. Different to a friend than to a stranger. Different to someone who feels safe than to someone who feels maybe unpredictable. What's happening is your system is reading the room, consciously or unconsciously, or both, and then adjusting. This is your brain adapting to the specific situation. Your nervous system decides who you are and who you're going to be before you ever do. Most of these shifts don't come from thought. They come from your body. Your nervous system is actually constantly scanning for these really subtle cues. Like, is this person safe? Or are they judging me? Do I need to perform or can I relax here? Or even, is it okay for me to take up space? Before you choose a word, your body is already decided, expand or contract, and your behavior follows that decision. That's why you might feel calm and open with one person, and tense or shut down with another, even if both people are technically nice. You see, your body isn't really reacting to logic here. It's reacting to things like tone, warmth versus sharpness, curiosity versus judgment, power dynamics, who holds authority, approval, or influence. Other things like history, remembering past experiences that felt similar, even if the person in question is new. Perceived risk, emotional, social, or psychological risk. Predictability. Do you know how this person is going to respond? Emotional availability. Can they tolerate emotion? Or do they shut it down? Attunement. Do they actually listen? Or do they just wait to speak? Boundaries. Do they respect yours or just push past them? Consistency. Are they steady or hot and cold? Judgment sensitivity. How quickly are they to criticize or dismiss? Mirroring. Do they reflect back your energy or distort it? Expectation pressure. Who are you supposed to be around them? Or past conditioning from authority figures or caregivers, peers, or even ex-relationships. Things like emotional safety. Can you be imperfect here without consequence? Social hierarchy, status, confidence, charisma, dominance. These are all cues. Attention quality. Is the person in question actually present? Or are they distracted or scanning for threat? Conflict tolerance. Can disagreement exist without rupture? And other subtle cues like facial micro-expressions, posture, breath, dialogue pace, and self-relevance. How much of your worth feels on the line in this interaction? Now, none of this happens consciously. It's happening all the time in the background in every social situation. And constant adjustments are being made. As I said, your nervous system decides before you do. And that isn't overthinking it, I promise. It's pattern recognition learned over time. And social masking isn't lying. A lot of people hear the word masking and think it means deception. It doesn't. Masking is what happens when parts of you learn, this version of me is safer here. So you soften or you shrink, you joke, you become more agreeable. You become hyper competent. Maybe you become quiet. Or you become more outgoing to play into the people around you. Not because you're pretending, but because at some other point, that version of you worked in a different situation that's similar to this one. Maybe being too loud or too quiet got you criticized. Maybe being emotional got you dismissed. Maybe being yourself cost you connection. So your system adapted. And that adaptation wasn't wrong. It was your nervous system doing what it's meant to do. Intelligently. But over time, that can become exhausting. Especially when you don't know you're doing it. When you don't know you're masking. This is why some people get more of you than others. You might notice that there are certain people around you whom you feel more you. You don't rehearse, you don't need to edit. You don't need to monitor yourself so closely. And that's not really a coincidence, it's a feeling of safety that your nervous system is feeling. And when it feels safe, it allows spontaneity, emotion, playfulness, honesty, even rest. But when it senses threat, even a subtle threat, it will prioritize control. And control can look like overthinking what you say, monitoring reactions, choosing your words more carefully, holding parts of yourself back. But this is regulation. Identity fluidity doesn't mean you don't know who you are. Some people worry that acting differently means they lack a core self. But identity isn't a fixed statue. It's more like water. It changes shape depending on the container, without losing what it is or losing its essence. Your values don't change. Your capacity for care doesn't change. Your sensitivity doesn't change. What changes is expression. And expression is always contextual. So you're not inconsistent. You're just contextual. Be proud of that. I know I am. The danger isn't changing, though. It's forgetting who you are. The real issue isn't that you act differently. It's when you start believing that only one version of you is acceptable. When you feel like you can only exist safely in performance mode. When unmasking feels unsafe. When authenticity feels risky. When being alone feels like relief because no one is watching you, so you don't need to perform. Doing all this is very tiring. And this tiredness comes from long-term masking, especially without awareness. If you've lived through anxiety or emotional unpredictability, or relationship pain, trauma, loss, maybe even sickness, your nervous system becomes more sensitive. And I'm not saying it becomes weaker. It just becomes more precise, more acute. It learns patterns. So you might notice that you scan people more closely or you adjust faster. You might retreat sooner. Or you struggle to just relax socially. It means your system learned to protect you in environments where safety was not guaranteed. You don't need to pick one version of yourself. You don't need to decide which one is real, because they all are. The quiet one, the expressive one, the guarded one, maybe even the playful one. They're not lies, they're responses. The goal isn't to force consistency. The goal is to create enough safety internally and externally that you don't have to disappear to belong. It's okay to be cautious, and that's exactly what you're doing. It's what I'm doing. but it gets easier when you understand what mechanics are actually in play here. Trust me, bro. Because awareness changes everything. The moment you notice, oh, I'm shrinking right now, or I'm performing, or maybe I'm holding back, you're no longer trapped in it because you're witnessing it from the outside. And that awareness creates choice. Not, I must change now, or I must act this way. But what does my body actually feel it needs right now? And sometimes the answer is as simple as a bit of protection or rest. Sometimes it's honesty. Sometimes you need distance. And sometimes your body is telling you to run the fuck away. All of which are valid. There's one thing that I heard ages ago that stuck with me ever since, but it only really made sense when I understood that I was masking. When you find yourself having to change to suit your surroundings, it's time to find new surroundings. And the same goes with people. But masking, remember, isn't changing yourself. It's just you being cautious. I call it being contextually and adaptively expressive. So if you take anything from this video, let it be this. Masking is normal. You don't act differently because you're fake. You act differently because you're human. Because you've learned. Because you've adapted. Because your nervous system remembers the hard times. You're regulated differently in different environments. Your behavior changes based on perceived safety, power, friendship. That's how nervous systems work. And the aim isn't to eliminate those differences. It's simply to recognize what creates them. And as environments become safer, the contrast between the different versions of you will naturally reduce. Anyway. So if you've ever wondered, why am I like this with some people and not with others? The answer is intelligence, memory, and a nervous system trying to protect you. And possibly a trauma response, but that's a whole other video. And once you understand that, you stop judging yourself for adapting. And you start asking yourself where you actually feel safe enough to be real. Even if that starts with being alone in your house. Even if it means having to change your surroundings. Or your people. That's awareness. And awareness is king. You don't lose this armor by force. You can only take it off when you no longer need it. I love that I mask. My name is John. You're welcome to be here, and you're more than welcome to stay here.